Subscribe to Storylab for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. Chapter 1: The Quiet Life. Gregory Pratt wiped the blood from his cleaver with the same methodical precision he'd once used to clean his tactical knife in Kandahar. At 52, his hands remained steady, though now they carved beef instead of carving through enemy lines. The transition from Delta Force operative to neighborhood butcher had taken 5 years to feel natural, but Gregory had found peace in the simple rhythm of running Pratt's prime cuts. The bell above his shop door chimed as his daughter Paige Arnold walked in, her nursing scrubs wrinkled from a 12-hour shift at Mercy General. At 28, she had her late mother's gentle eyes, but Gregory's unwavering determination. "Dad, you're working late again," she said, hanging her purse on the familiar hook behind the counter. "Mrs. Chin's order can wait until tomorrow." Gregory smiled, the expression softening his weathered face. Old habits. Besides, precision matters in this business too. He set down his tools and washed his hands. "How was your shift?" 3 surgeries, 2 cardiac arrests, and one man who insisted he could cure his appendicitis with whiskey. Paige slumped into the wooden chair he'd placed behind the register just for her visits. "Sometimes I wonder if I chose the right profession. Helping people is never the wrong choice, sweetheart." Gregory had learned this lesson the hard way. His military service had been about eliminating threats, but Paige chose to save lives. It was one of the many reasons he was proud of her. The comfortable silence between them was interrupted by Gregory's phone buzzing. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. "Pratt's Prime Cuts. Is this Gregory Pratt?" The voice was rough, cocky, with a slight accent he couldn't place. "Shop's closed. Call back tomorrow." "Oh, I ain't calling about meat, old man. I'm calling about your daughter." Gregory's blood turned to ice. His eyes snapped to Paige, who was sorting through mail, oblivious to the conversation. In that instant, 15 years of civilian life evaporated, and something cold and familiar awakened in his chest. "Who is this?" His voice remained calm, but his free hand instinctively reached for where his sidearm used to rest. "Let's just say I'm someone who knows things. Like how your little princess drives a white Honda Civic, license plate 7HG 4821. Like how she gets off work at 8 p.m. on Thursdays. Like how she's sitting in your little butcher shop right now." Gregory's eyes found the security camera mounted outside his shop. A black SUV sat across the street, windows tinted. He'd noticed it earlier, but dismissed it as another customer at the diner next door. "What do you want?" "Information. About your old friend, Marshall Bryan. Word is you two served together, and word is he left something valuable before he died." Marshall Bryan. Gregory hadn't heard that name in 3 years, not since his former teammate's funeral. Marshall had been his spotter, his best friend, and the only other survivor of Operation Nightfall in 2019. What could this caller possibly want with a dead man's secrets? "I don't know what you're talking about." The laugh that came through the phone made Gregory's skin crawl. "Sure you don't. Tell you what, old man. You got 48 hours to remember. Otherwise, your little angel might find herself in pieces. Small ones." The line went dead. Gregory stared at his phone, his mind racing through possibilities and protocols. Paige looked up from the mail, concern creasing her brow. "Dad, you look pale. Was that a customer?" "Just a wrong number, sweetheart." He forced another smile. "Why don't you head home? I'll finish up here." As Paige gathered her things, Gregory's mind was already shifting into tactical mode. Whoever these people were, they'd made a critical mistake. They'd threatened the one person in the world who mattered more to him than his own life. His kill count stood at 295. It might be time to add to that number. Chapter 2: Shadows of the Past. Gregory spent the night researching instead of sleeping. His modest apartment above the butcher shop transformed into a makeshift command center as he pulled out equipment he hadn't touched in years. A secure laptop, encrypted hard drives, and a satellite phone emerged from a hidden compartment behind his bedroom wall. The first thing he did was run a trace on the call. The number was a burner purchased with cash in Detroit 3 days ago. Not much help, but it told him his enemies were organized and careful. Next, he pulled up everything he could find on Marshall Bryan's death. Officially, Marshall had died in a car accident while visiting his sister in Colorado. But Gregory remembered the phone call he'd received 2 days before Marshall's death. His old friend had sounded paranoid, talking about being followed, about cleaning up old business. At 3 a.m., Gregory's secure line buzzed. The caller ID showed Ian Davidson, another Delta Force alumni who now worked private security in Los Angeles. Greg? Jesus, man. I haven't heard from you in 2 years. What's going on? Ian, I need information. Someone's threatening Paige, and they mention Marshall. What do you know about his death? The silence stretched long enough that Gregory wondered if the connection had dropped. Marshall was into some dark stuff before he died, Greg. After he left the service, he took contracts with a private military company called Blackwater Solutions. Word is, he discovered something he shouldn't have. What kind of something? The kind that gets people killed. Look, I can't talk about this over the phone, even encrypted. Can you meet me? I can't leave town. It might take Paige. Then I'm coming to you. I'll be there by tomorrow night. After Ian hung up, Gregory turned his attention to protecting his daughter. He couldn't tell her the truth. Not yet, but he could take precautions. He called in favors with local law enforcement, specifically Detective Will Clark, who'd served 2 tours in Iraq before joining the police force. Will, I need a favor. Can you have patrol cars swing by Mercy General more often today? And maybe have someone keep an eye on my daughter? What's this about, Greg? Someone made a threat. I'm handling it, but I need to know Paige is safe while I work. Will had seen enough of life to recognize when a man was deadly serious. Consider done. You need anything else? Not from you. Thanks, Will. Gregory's next call was to Paige's supervisor at the hospital. Using a story about a gas leak at his shop, he convinced them to reassign Paige to the day shift for the remainder of the week. It would keep her in public, surrounded by people, during the most vulnerable hours. By dawn, Gregory had compiled a list of everyone Marshall had worked with at Blackwater Solutions. Most were mercenaries and contractors, but one name stood out: Chad Ames, a former CIA operative who now ran security consulting for various international clients. According to Gregory's research, Chad operated out of a nightclub called the Crimson Room in downtown Detroit, the same city where the burner phone had been purchased. Gregory's phone rang at exactly 8 a.m. Same unknown number. Good morning, sunshine. Sleep well. What do you want to know about Marshall Bryan? Now we're talking. Marshall had something that belongs to my employer. A hard drive containing financial records from his time at Blackwater. We need it back. Marshall never mentioned any hard drive. That's unfortunate for your daughter. Because I'm looking at her right now. Gregory's blood pressure spiked. He pulled up the hospital's security feed on his laptop, a system he'd hacked months ago as a precautionary measure. Sure enough, a man in a gray suit stood near the information desk, phone pressed to his ear. Touch her, and you're dead. Empty threats from an old man. You got 24 hours now, not 48. Find that drive, or start picking out a coffin. As the call ended, Gregory watched the man in gray walk away from the hospital. He screenshot the image and ran it through facial recognition software Ian had provided him years ago. Jerome Roberts, age 34, former Army Ranger discharged for excessive violence. 3 arrests for assault, 2 convictions, currently employed by AIM Security Solutions. Gregory smiled for the first time since this started. Finally, a real lead. He spent the rest of the morning preparing. From another hidden cache, he retrieved items that hadn't seen daylight in 5 years. Tactical vest, night vision goggles, suppressed .45 caliber pistol, and a custom knife with his old unit's insignia engraved on the handle. By afternoon, Gregory had a plan. If Chad Ames wanted to play games involving family, he was about to learn why Gregory Pratt had been the most feared operative in Delta Force. But first, he had one more call to make. Paige, sweetheart, I need you to do something for me. Chapter 3, The Setup. Dad, this is crazy, Paige said, stuffing clothes into an overnight bag. A gas leak doesn't require me to stay at Rebecca's house for 3 days. Rebecca Luna, Paige's best friend since nursing school, lived 40 minutes outside the city in a gated community. More importantly, she was married to Rick Goldberg, a former Marine who kept a well-stocked gun safe. Just humor your old man, Gregory said, checking his watch. Ian Davidson would arrive in 6 hours, and he needed Paige safely away before then. Rick knows you're coming. He's expecting you for dinner. Paige studied her father's face, noting the tension he was trying to hide. There's no gas leak, is there? Gregory considered lying again, then decided his daughter deserved better. There might be some trouble. Nothing I can't handle, but I need to know you're safe while I handle it. What kind of trouble? The kind that's better left unexplained until it's over. Paige set down her bag and crossed her arms. I'm a grown woman, Dad. I can take care of myself. I know you can, but this isn't about what you can handle. It's about what I can handle. I can't focus on solving the problem if I'm worried about your safety. Something in his tone made her reconsider. Growing up, Paige had learned to recognize when her father shifted into his military mode. It didn't happen often, but when it did, arguing was pointless. Fine, but you call me every day. And when this is over, you explain everything. Deal. After Paige left, Gregory returned to his preparations. He'd spent the afternoon conducting reconnaissance on the Crimson Room, using city planning records and social media posts to map the building's layout. The nightclub occupied the ground floor of a converted warehouse, with Chad Ames maintaining offices on the second floor. At 7 p.m., Ian Davidson arrived carrying a duffel bag and wearing the same grim expression he'd worn during their last mission together. You look like hell, Ian said, embracing his old friend. I feel worse. What did you find out about Marshall? Ian set his bag on the counter and pulled out a thick manila folder. Marshall wasn't just working for Blackwater Solutions. He was documenting their illegal activities, arms dealing, human trafficking, money laundering. The works. Why would he do that? Because they killed his sister. Gregory felt the world shift beneath his feet. Sarah? I thought she died in the car accident with him. She died 3 days before Marshall. The accident was staged to cover it up. Sarah worked as an accountant for a charity in Denver. Turns out, that charity was a front for moving Blackwater's dirty money. When she figured it out and threatened to go to the FBI, they eliminated her. And Marshall found out. He spent 6 months gathering evidence. The hard drive contains financial records, communications, even video footage of meetings with foreign weapons dealers. It's enough to bring down Chad Ames and half his organization. Gregory poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed one to Ian. Where's the drive now? That's the million-dollar question. Marshall told me he hid it somewhere safe, somewhere only someone who really knew him would think to look. Gregory considered this. He and Marshall had been through hell together, shared foxholes and secrets. If Marshall wanted to hide something, the cabin, Gregory said suddenly. What cabin? Marshall's grandfather left him a hunting cabin in northern Michigan. We went there once after our discharge, just to decompress. It's off the grid, no electricity, no phone service. If Marshall wanted to hide something, that's where he'd put it. Ian nodded. That makes sense. But Greg, you can't just walk in there and take it. Chad Ames has been looking for that drive for months. They'll have people watching anywhere Marshall might have hidden it. Then we'll have to be smarter than they are. Gregory spread out a map of Michigan on his counter. The cabin is here, about 3 hours north. There's only one road in, but several hiking trails that connect to the main property. If we approach from the east, Ian shook his head. Greg, I came here to give you information, not to sign up for a mission. They threatened to kill my daughter, Ian. I'm going to find that drive, and then I'm going to make Chad Ames pay for every moment of fear he's put her through. You can help me do it smart, or you can watch me do it loud and messy. Ian studied his friend's face and saw something that reminded him why Gregory had been promoted ahead of men with more experience and better connections. When Gregory Pratt set his mind on something, the universe tended to bend around his will. All right, Ian said finally, but we do this my way. Tactical, professional, and with an exit strategy. Agreed. We leave at dawn. As they planned their approach to Marshall's cabin, Gregory felt the familiar clarity that came with having a mission. For 5 years, he'd been Gregory the butcher, Gregory the civilian, Gregory the retired soldier, trying to live a quiet life. Tomorrow, he'd be Gregory Pratt, Delta Force operative, and Chad Ames was about to learn the difference. Chapter 4. Into the Woods. The drive to northern Michigan took 4 hours, with Ian navigating while Gregory drove his pickup truck along increasingly rural roads. They'd left Detroit at 5 a.m., stopping only for coffee and to switch out the license plates with ones Ian had borrowed from a used car lot. "Tell me about Chad Ames," Gregory said as they turned onto a dirt road that would take them within 2 miles of Marshall's cabin. Ian consulted the file he'd compiled. 43 years old, former CIA wet work specialist, officially discharged for psychological issues, unofficially pushed out for enjoying the killing too much. He started Ames Security Solutions 5 years ago, positioning it as a legitimate private military company. In reality, it's a criminal organization that uses military tactics. How many people does he have? On payroll, maybe 20. But he can call in favors from dozens of former military contractors who work freelance. The man who threatened you, Jerome Roberts, is typical of his employees, skilled operators with flexible morals. They parked the truck at an abandoned hunting camp and continued on foot, using GPS and topographical maps to navigate through dense forest. Both men moved with the silent efficiency of soldiers who'd spent years in hostile territory. After an hour of hiking, they reached the ridge overlooking Marshall's property. Through binoculars, Gregory could see the small log cabin beside a pristine lake. It looked exactly as he remembered it: peaceful, isolated, and completely vulnerable. "Movement," Ian whispered, pointing toward the cabin's front porch. Gregory adjusted his binoculars and spotted a man in camouflage sitting in a rocking chair, rifle across his lap. One guard visible, probably others inside. They spent 30 minutes observing, identifying at least 3 separate individuals moving around the property. Professional deployment, rotating watch schedules, overlapping fields of fire. Chad Ames wasn't taking any chances. "There," Ian said, indicating a black SUV parked behind the cabin. "Same type of vehicle that was watching your shop." Gregory felt a cold satisfaction. "They're definitely here for the same reason we are. So how do we get past them?" Gregory studied the terrain, noting wind direction, natural cover, and approach routes. A plan began forming in his mind, one that relied on his enemy's expectations working against them. "We don't go past them. We go through them." Ian gave him a sharp look. "Greg, we're not at war. These are American citizens, even if they're criminals. They threatened to kill my daughter in pieces. As far as I'm concerned, we are at war." The debate was interrupted by movement near the cabin. A fourth man emerged from the building, talking on a satellite phone. Even at this distance, Gregory could see the man's expensive suit and polished shoes, completely inappropriate for the wilderness. "That's got to be Chad Ames," Ian said. Gregory focused his binoculars and memorized every detail of the man's face. Average height, athletic build, graying hair, and a confidence that came from never having been truly challenged. He came personally. That means the drive is definitely here. Or he's getting impatient and decided to oversee the search himself. Gregory's phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. 24 hours are up, old man. Time to talk." "They're calling early," Gregory said, showing Ian the message. His phone rang immediately. Gregory answered on the 3rd ring. "Find it yet?" Chad Ames' voice was smooth, educated, completely different from the rough tone of his subordinate from yesterday. "I need more time. Time is a luxury your daughter doesn't have. My associate, Mr. Roberts, is very eager to begin his work with her. He has such creative ideas about motivation." Gregory's grip on the phone tightened, but his voice remained level. "What makes you think I can find something Marshall hid? We served together, but that doesn't mean he told me his secrets. Because Marshall Bryan was a sentimental fool. He kept photos of your unit in his apartment, talked about you like you were brothers. Men like that don't hide important things from their family." Through his binoculars, Gregory watched Chad pace back and forth on the cabin's porch, phone pressed to his ear. "I'll need to search his personal effects. Where did he live?" "Already searched. The drive wasn't there." "Then maybe it doesn't exist." "Oh, it exists. Marshall was very clear about that before he died. He even gave us a helpful hint. Said it was somewhere only his brother-in-arms would think to look." Gregory felt Ian tense beside him. Marshall's final words had been a message specifically for Gregory. I'll keep looking, Gregory said. You have until sunset. After that, Mr. Roberts begins expressing his disappointment on your daughter. The line went dead. Ian was already checking his watch. 6 hours until sunset. We need to move. Gregory put away his phone and pulled out his tactical knife. The familiar weight in his hand brought back memories of darker times, when problems were solved with violence and questions were answered with blood. Ian, I want you to know something. Whatever happens down there, these men chose their fate when they threatened my family. Greg, my daughter is everything to me. The only good thing I've ever done in this world. I won't let them hurt her. Ian studied his friend's face and saw the same cold determination he'd witnessed on a dozen battlefields. Gregory Pratt was done being a civilian. All right, what's the plan? Chapter 5, Hunter and Hunted. Gregory and Ian spent 2 hours circling the cabin, identifying guard positions and patrol routes. Chad's men were professional but predictable, rotating every 30 minutes, maintaining radio contact, covering all obvious approaches. What they weren't prepared for was an attack from someone who'd spent 15 years learning to kill silently. At 2 p.m., Gregory moved into position near the lake's edge, where tall reeds provided concealment. The guard rotation put one man walking the shoreline every hour, checking for boat approaches that would never come. When the guard passed Gregory's hiding spot, it took less than 10 seconds. A hand over the mouth, a blade between the ribs angled upward into the heart, and the man died without making a sound. Gregory dragged the body into the reeds and took the man's radio. Team 2, report, came a voice over the radio 20 minutes later. Gregory keyed the mic, disguising his voice. Team 2, all clear. Copy that. 1 down, 3 to go. Ian had positioned himself near the cabin's rear entrance, waiting for Gregory's signal. When the next guard rotation began, Gregory keyed his radio twice, the ghost signal they'd used in Afghanistan. The guard approaching the back door never saw Ian emerge from behind the woodshed. A sleeper hold, applied with surgical precision, dropped the man unconscious without killing him. Ian zip-tied his hands and feet, then gagged him with duct tape. 2 down. Chad's voice crackled over the radio. Roberts, take another sweep around the perimeter. I don't like how quiet it's been. Gregory watched through his scope as Jerome Roberts, the man who'd been watching his daughter at the hospital, emerged from the cabin carrying an assault rifle. Roberts moved with the careful efficiency of Special Forces training, checking corners and maintaining situational awareness. But training could only compensate for so much. Roberts was hunting a civilian butcher, not a Delta Force operative with 295 confirmed kills. Gregory let Roberts pass his position, then followed 20 feet behind, matching the man's movement step for step. When Roberts paused to examine tracks near the lake shore, tracks Gregory had deliberately left, Gregory struck. The attack came from Roberts' blind spot, a tackle that drove both men into the shallow water. Roberts tried to bring his rifle around, but Gregory was already inside his guard, one hand controlling the weapon while the other drove his knife toward Roberts' throat. Roberts was good. He rolled with the attack, using Gregory's momentum against him, and managed to create enough space to draw his sidearm. But Gregory was better. A precise strike to Roberts' wrist numbed his gun hand, and a follow-up elbow to the solar plexus dropped him to his knees. You should have stayed away from my daughter, Gregory said quietly, then opened Roberts' throat with a single cut. Jerome Roberts became kill number 296. What the hell was that? Chad's voice carried across the water. Gregory keyed Roberts' radio. Thought I saw something. False alarm. Get back here. Now. Gregory stripped Roberts of his weapons and radio, then signaled Ian to move to Phase 2 of their plan. While Gregory had been eliminating the perimeter guards, Ian had been studying the cabin's construction. Built in the 1940s, it had thick log walls and a stone foundation, good for keeping out cold and animals, less effective against military-grade explosives. Ian placed shaped charges at 3 key structural points, then retreated to his designated position. When Gregory gave the signal, they would breach simultaneously from 2 directions, using shock and overwhelming force to end the confrontation quickly. But first, Gregory had one more call to make. He dialed Chad's number from Robert's phone. Roberts? Why are you calling me? Because Jerome Roberts is dead, and you're next. The silence stretched long enough that Gregory wondered if Chad had hung up. Who is this? The man whose daughter you threatened. The man whose friend you killed. The man who's about to make you pay for every mistake you've ever made. Gregory Pratt. Chad's voice carried a note of genuine surprise. I underestimated you. Yes, you did. Now here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk out of that cabin with your hands visible, and you're going to tell me where my daughter is. Chad laughed, a sound devoid of humor. Or what? You'll kill me like you kill my men? No. If you don't cooperate, I'll take you alive. And then I'll spend days showing you techniques I learned from people who made torture into an art form. Big words from a man I have outnumbered and outgunned. Look around you, Chad. Count your men. Gregory waited, listening to the radio chatter as Chad tried to reach his guards. Team 2 report. Roberts, where are you? God damn it. Somebody answer me. It's just you and one other man in that cabin, Gregory said into the phone. And in about 30 seconds, we're coming in. We? How many of you are there? Enough. Gregory hung up and keyed his radio. Ian, you ready? Ready. On your mark. Gregory checked his watch. 4:30 p.m. 90 minutes until Chad's deadline. But Gregory wasn't planning to wait that long. He thought about Paige, safe at Rebecca's house, probably wondering why her father had been so paranoid about a gas leak that didn't exist. Soon, she'd understand that sometimes good people had to do terrible things to protect the ones they loved. Mark, Gregory said into his radio. The shaped charges detonated simultaneously, blowing 3 large holes in the cabin's walls. Gregory and Ian breached through the smoke and debris, moving with the coordinated precision of operators who'd cleared 100 buildings together. Chad Ames was about to learn why Delta Force had the reputation it did. Chapter 6, Revelations. The cabin's interior was chaos, smoke, debris, and the acrid smell of explosives. Gregory moved through the haze like a ghost, his night vision goggles turning the destruction into a green-tinted tactical environment. Ian entered from the opposite side, their movements synchronized despite 5 years apart. Chad's remaining bodyguard, a young man with military tattoos and wild eyes, opened fire blindly through the smoke. His shots went wide, panic overriding training. Gregory dropped him with 2 precise shots to the chest. Kill number 297. Chad himself had taken cover behind an overturned table, his expensive suit torn and dust-covered. When the smoke cleared, he found himself facing 2 armed men whose faces he could barely make out in the dim light filtering through the damaged walls. Chad Ames, Gregory said, his voice eerily calm. We need to talk. Go to hell, Chad spat, then noticed the bodies of his men scattered around the room. Jesus Christ, what are you? I'm the man whose daughter you threatened. I'm also a former Delta Force operative with 300 confirmed kills. Well, 297. I'm hoping you and your friends will help me reach a nice round number. Ian moved to secure the cabin while Gregory kept his weapon trained on Chad. Buildings clear. Just a now. Chad's eyes darted between the 2 men, calculating odds that weren't in his favor. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into, Pratt. I don't work alone. I have associates, people who won't appreciate. Where's my daughter? Gregory interrupted. Safe. For now. Gregory shot Chad in the left shoulder, the suppress .45, making little more than a metallic cough. Chad screamed and clutched the wound. Wrong answer. Where's my daughter? I don't. She's not. Fuck, that hurts. Gregory moved closer, his weapon now pointed at Chad's kneecap. I can make this last for days. Or you can tell me what I want to know and die quickly. Chad's face had gone pale from pain and blood loss, but he managed a bitter laugh. You really don't get it, do you? Your daughter was never in danger. We never even grabbed her. The words hit Gregory like a physical blow. What? It was all a bluff, you moron. Psychological warfare. We researched you, found your weakness, and applied pressure. We never actually touched your precious little girl. Ian stepped closer. He's lying. Am I? Think about it, Pratt. When did you actually see anyone threaten her? A man standing in a hospital lobby? A car parked across the street? We made you paranoid. Let your imagination do the work. Gregory felt the world shift beneath his feet. But Roberts? He said he was looking at her. Roberts was looking at the hospital directory. You paranoid bastard. The whole thing was theater designed to make you find Marshall's drive. The rage that had been driving Gregory for 2 days suddenly twisted into something else. Confusion, doubt, and a terrible possibility that he'd killed 3 men to protect his daughter from a threat that never existed. Prove it, Gregory said. Chad reached slowly into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. With shaking hands, he accessed his contacts and called a number. Hello, Rebecca. This is Chad Ames. I work with Gregory Pratt. Could you put his daughter on the phone? There's been an emergency. Gregory could hear Rebecca's confused voice through the speaker, then Paige's familiar tone. Dad? What's wrong? Some man says there's an emergency. Paige, are you all right? Has anyone bothered you? Anyone following you or watching the house? No, Dad, I'm fine. Rebecca and I were just making dinner. What's this about? Gregory's hand trembled as he took the phone. For the first time in 48 hours, he heard his daughter's voice without the filter of mortal terror. Nothing, sweetheart. False alarm. I'll explain later. Dad, you're scaring me. What's going on? Everything's fine. I love you. Gregory ended the call and stared at Chad, who was smiling despite the bullet in his shoulder. Disappointed? All this righteous fury. And it turns out your little angel was never in danger. How does it feel to be a killer without a cause? The question hung in the air like smoke from the explosions. Gregory felt something fundamental shift in his understanding of the past 2 days. The men he'd killed were criminals, but they'd never actually threatened his daughter. They'd simply used his love for her as a weapon against him. But why? Gregory asked. Why go through all this for a hard drive? Chad's smile widened. Because the drive doesn't just contain evidence of Blackwater's crimes. It contains evidence of mine. Financial records, communications, video footage of meetings that could put me away for 3 consecutive life sentences. Marshall Bryan was going to destroy everything I'd built. So you killed him. I had him killed, just like I'll have you killed, assuming you're stupid enough to let me live. Ian had been searching the cabin while Chad talked. Now he emerged from the back bedroom, holding a laptop bag. Found it, Ian said. Marshall hid the drive inside a fake battery pack. Clever. Gregory took the bag, feeling the weight of Marshall's final gift. Evidence that could bring down the criminal organization that had killed his friend and terrorized dozens of victims. Justice delayed but not denied. What now? Ian asked. Gregory looked at Chad, who was still smiling despite his obvious pain. The man felt no remorse for the lives he'd destroyed, the families he'd torn apart, the chaos he'd spread in pursuit of profit. He was a predator who would never stop hunting. Now we make sure this ends permanently. Gregory, if you kill me, my associates will. Your associates will find new employment. Criminal organizations don't avenge fallen leaders. They replace them. Gregory raised his weapon, then paused. Tell me one thing. If my daughter had actually been a threat to your operation, would you have killed her? Chad's smile never wavered. Without hesitation. Kill number 298. Chapter 7. The Reckoning Begins. 2 days later, Gregory sat in his apartment above the butcher shop, watching news reports about the tragic explosion at a remote cabin in northern Michigan. Local authorities were investigating what appeared to be a gas leak that had claimed 4 lives, including suspected arms dealer Chad Ames. The hard drive Ian had recovered was already in the hands of FBI Special Agent Carol Henry, a former Army intelligence officer who specialized in prosecuting private military contractors. Within hours of receiving Marshall's evidence, federal task forces had raided 6 locations across 3 states. Gregory's phone rang. Detective Will Clark. Greg, I wanted to give you a heads up. Those patrol cars I had watching your daughter? Turns out there was never any real threat. The guys making the calls were using voice-over internet protocols from overseas servers. Sophisticated stuff, but ultimately just harassment. I figured as much, Gregory said. Thanks for the extra protection anyway. No problem. You doing okay? You sounded pretty shaken up when you called. I'm fine, Will. Just a father being overprotective. After hanging up, Gregory allowed himself a moment of genuine relief. Paige was safe, had always been safe and would remain safe now that Chad Ames and his organization were either dead or facing federal prosecution. But relief was complicated by other emotions: guilt over the men he'd killed, doubt about whether he'd overreacted, and a nagging question about what kind of man he'd become. Ian knocked on the door, interrupting Gregory's brooding. He entered carrying coffee and donuts from the bakery down the street. "Thought you might need some normal human food after our camping trip." "Thanks." Gregory accepted the coffee, but ignored the donuts. "You hear from Agent Henry? 23 arrests so far, with more coming." The financial records on Marshall's drive implicated politicians, military contractors, and foreign arms dealers. "This is going to be a big deal." "Good. Marshall deserves justice." Ian studied his friend's face. "You're having second thoughts about what we did." It wasn't a question. Ian knew Gregory well enough to read his moods, especially the dark ones. "Those men at the cabin, they never actually hurt anyone I cared about. They made threats, but they were empty threats. Threats backed up by a history of real violence. Chad Ames wasn't bluffing about being dangerous. He just wasn't currently planning to hurt Paige. That's a fine distinction. It's the only distinction that matters." Ian sat down across from his friend. "Greg, you've seen enough of the world to know that some people can only be stopped with violence. Chad Ames had killed at least a dozen people over the past 5 years. His organization was trafficking weapons to terrorist groups and drugs to American cities. You didn't kill him to protect Paige. You killed him to protect everyone." Gregory considered this. The rational part of his mind agreed with Ian's assessment, but the emotional part struggled with the complexity of the situation. "Besides," Ian continued, "you think the FBI task force is going to arrest everyone? These criminal networks are like cancer. You have to cut out every cell, or it spreads. Chad's death sends a message that some crimes have permanent consequences." Gregory's phone buzzed with a text from Paige. "Dad, I'm coming over for dinner tonight. We need to talk about what happened this week." "She knows something's wrong," Gregory said, showing Ian the message. "What are you going to tell her?" "The truth, or as much of it as she needs to know." Ian nodded and stood up. "I'm flying back to Los Angeles tomorrow. You going to be all right?" "I'm always all right, Ian. It's my natural state." "Bullshit. But I understand why you can't admit otherwise." After Ian left, Gregory spent the afternoon preparing dinner and rehearsing the conversation he would have with his daughter. How do you explain to someone who saves lives for a living that sometimes taking lives is the only way to protect the innocent? At 6 p.m., Paige knocked on his door. She looked tired but determined, carrying the expression she wore when dealing with difficult patients. "Dad, we need to talk." Gregory let her in and poured 2 glasses of wine. "I know we do, sweetheart. There was no gas leak, was there? And that man who called asking about an emergency, that wasn't someone from your work?" "No, there wasn't a gas leak." Paige sat down at his kitchen table and folded her hands. "Tell me what really happened." Gregory looked at his daughter, his intelligent, compassionate, stubborn daughter, and decided she deserved the truth, even if it changed how she saw him. "Someone threatened you to get to me. They wanted information about a friend of mine who had died. I made sure the threat was eliminated." "What kind of threat?" "The permanent kind." Paige studied her father's face, noting the lines of stress that hadn't been there a week ago, the way his hands rested motionless on the table, a stillness she'd learned to associate with his most serious moods. "Did you hurt anyone, Dad?" Gregory met her eyes. "Yes." "Did you kill anyone?" The question hung between them like a blade. Gregory could lie, deflect, or refuse to answer. Instead, he chose honesty. "Yes." Paige was quiet for a long time, processing information that fundamentally changed her understanding of recent events. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. "Do you regret it?" "I regret that it was necessary. I don't regret protecting you." "How many people?" "4. Another silence, longer this time. Gregory waited for his daughter's judgment, prepared for anger, disgust, or fear. Instead, Paige reached across the table and took his hand. "Dad, I've seen what evil people do to innocent victims. I've worked on gunshot wounds from drive-by shootings, treated children who were abused by their parents, watched good people die because bad people made selfish choices. I don't like violence, but I understand that sometimes it's the only language evil people speak. Gregory felt something tight in his chest begin to loosen. You're not afraid of me. I'm afraid for you. There's a difference. They sat together in comfortable silence, father and daughter, protector and protected, both understanding that their relationship had evolved into something more honest and more complex. One more question, Paige said. Is it over? Gregory thought about the FBI raids, the arrests, the dismantled criminal network. Chad Ames and his organization were finished, their threat permanently eliminated. It's over. But even as he said it, Gregory wondered if it ever really was. Men like Chad Ames didn't operate in isolation. They were part of larger networks, darker conspiracies, systems of corruption that extended far beyond any single criminal enterprise. Still, for now, his daughter was safe. His friend had justice. And Gregory Pratt could return to his quiet life as a neighborhood butcher, at least until the next time someone threatened his family. Chapter 8. Unfinished Business. 3 weeks later, Gregory was closing his shop when a familiar black SUV pulled up across the street. For a moment, muscle memory from his Delta Force days kicked in, scanned for exits, identify weapons, assess threat level. Then he forced himself to relax. Chad Ames was dead. His organization was scattered or imprisoned. The threat was over. But as Gregory watched, a woman in an expensive suit emerged from the SUV and walked directly toward his shop. She moved with confidence and purpose, her heels clicking against the pavement with military precision. Gregory recognized her type immediately. Former military, possibly intelligence, currently employed in the private sector. She was attractive in a calculated way, her appearance designed to disarm while concealing the predator beneath. The bell above his door chimed as she entered. Mr. Pratt? My name is Samantha McConnell. I represent certain interests that were affected by recent events in Michigan. Gregory continued cleaning his equipment, not looking up. Shop's closed. I'm not here to buy meat. I'm here because you killed someone who owed my employers a great deal of money. Now Gregory looked up. Samantha McConnell was smiling, but her eyes were cold as winter. Chad Ames borrowed $15 million from people who don't offer flexible payment terms. When he died, that debt transferred to whoever inherited his assets. I didn't inherit anything from Chad Ames except peace of mind. You inherited his problems, along with your friend Ian Davidson, who helped you eliminate Mr. Ames' operation. The mention of Ian sent a chill through Gregory. What do you want? $15 million, or equivalent services. Gregory set down his cleaver and gave Samantha his full attention. Services? My employers occasionally require the elimination of certain individuals who pose problems to their business interests. Your military record suggests you would be quite effective in such a role. I'm retired. Recent events in Michigan suggest otherwise. Gregory considered his options. He could refuse and hope these people would simply go away. But experience told him that organizations demanding $15 million didn't accept no as an answer. He could fight, but that would put Paige in danger again. Or he could appear to negotiate while gathering intelligence. Who are your employers? People who prefer anonymity. But I can tell you they have interests in several countries and unlimited resources for pursuing debts. And if I refuse? Samantha's smile widened. Your daughter Paige drives a white Honda Civic, license plate 7HG 4821. She gets off work at Mercy General at varying hours, depending on her shift rotation. She's currently staying at Rebecca Luna's house in Westfield Estates, but she'll be returning to her apartment on Oak Street this weekend. Gregory felt the familiar cold fury beginning to build in his chest. You're making the same mistake Chad Ames made. Am I? Mr. Ames underestimated you and paid with his life. I have no intention of repeating his errors. That's why I'm not making threats. I'm making observations. Your daughter exists. My employers exist. These are simply facts. What specifically do you want me to do? There are 3 individuals who have caused problems for my employers. I want you to eliminate these problems. In exchange, your debt will be forgiven and your family will remain unmolested. Samantha placed a manila envelope on the counter. Details are inside. You have 48 hours to consider the offer. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Oh, and Mr. Pratt? Don't bother trying to contact Agent Carol Henry or your friend Detective Clark. My employers have significant influence with federal law enforcement. Any attempt to involve authorities will be viewed as breach of contract." After she left, Gregory opened the envelope. 3 photographs, 3 dossiers, 3 human beings whose only crime was apparently interfering with someone's criminal enterprise. The first target was Dr. Marshall Bryan's former colleague at Blackwater Solutions, Ricky Erickson, who had apparently survived the FBI raids and was now preparing to testify against his former employers. The dossier included his current address, daily routine, and security arrangements. The second was a journalist named Floyd Duke, who was investigating connections between private military contractors and foreign arms dealers. His upcoming article would apparently expose several of Samantha's employers' business relationships. The third was a federal prosecutor named Peter Pope, who was building a case against international money laundering operations. All 3 men were attempting to expose or prosecute the same type of criminal enterprise that Chad Ames had represented. All 3 were probably good people trying to do the right thing. Gregory's phone rang. Ian Davidson. "Greg, we have a problem. A woman named Samantha McConnell just paid me a visit in Los Angeles." "I know. She was here too. Same offer. Same offer. You gonna take it?" Gregory looked at the 3 photographs spread across his counter. Ricky Erickson was a family man with 2 young children. Floyd Duke had won awards for investigative journalism, exposing government corruption. Peter Pope had spent his career prosecuting organized crime. All 3 were exactly the type of people Gregory had spent his military career protecting. "No," Gregory said finally. "I'm not going to murder innocent people to pay a dead man's debts." "Then we need to end this permanently." "Agreed. What do you have in mind?" "The same thing we did in Michigan, except this time we go to the source. Samantha McConnell works for someone. Find out who, eliminate the threat, and end this cycle." Gregory considered this. After Chad Ames, he'd hoped to return to his quiet civilian life. But apparently, that life came with a price: the blood of innocent people who stood between criminals and their profits. "All right, Ian, one more mission. I'll start researching Samantha McConnell and her employers. You do what you need to do to protect Paige." After hanging up, Gregory called his daughter. "Paige, I need you to extend your stay at Rebecca's house." "Dad, I've been there for 3 weeks. I have my own apartment, my own life." Someone else made a threat. Different people, same situation. The silence on the phone told Gregory that his daughter was processing this information with the same mixture of fear and resignation she'd shown before. "How long this time?" "Until it's finished." "And how will you finish it?" "The same way I finished it last time." Another silence. Then, "Dad, I need to ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly." "All right. Are you becoming the kind of person who solves problems by killing people?" The question cut deeper than Gregory expected. Was he becoming a professional killer, using his military skills to eliminate anyone who threatened his peaceful life? Or was he simply a father protecting his family from predators who understood only violence? "I don't know, sweetheart. I hope not. Because if you are, I need to know. I can't have my father turning into the same kind of person he's fighting against. I won't let that happen. Promise me." "I promise." But even as Gregory made the promise, he wondered if it was already too late. 4 dead men in Michigan, 3 more targets in a manila envelope, and a growing list of enemies who seemed to multiply each time he eliminated one. Maybe Paige was right to be concerned. Maybe Gregory Pratt was becoming exactly the kind of person the world would be better off without. Or maybe the world needed people willing to get their hands dirty to protect the innocent. Time would tell which version of the truth would prove more accurate. Chapter 9, The Final Cut. Gregory spent 2 days researching Samantha McConnell, while Ian worked his contacts in Los Angeles. What they discovered was both alarming and oddly reassuring. McConnell worked for a consortium of international criminals who specialized in eliminating witnesses and whistleblowers, but the organization was smaller and more vulnerable than Chad Ames' operation had been. 6 core members, Ian reported during their encrypted phone call. All former intelligence operatives from various countries. They operate like a corporate board, collective decision-making, shared resources, no single leader to cut off the head. Where are they based? That's the interesting part. They don't have a permanent base. They meet in rotating locations, conduct business through encrypted communications, and maintain individual operations in different countries. Very sophisticated. Sophisticated enough to be untouchable. No one's untouchable, Greg. But taking down all 6 members would require resources we don't have. Gregory considered this. What if we don't need to take down all 6? What if we just need to make the cost of pursuing us greater than the value of the debt they're claiming? You mean make them write it off as a bad investment? Exactly. Criminals are ultimately business people. If collecting $15 million costs them $20 million in resources and personnel, they'll move on to easier targets. Ian was quiet for a moment. What did you have in mind? A demonstration. Something public enough to make the news, dramatic enough to make them reconsider their business model. Greg, if you're thinking of turning yourself into some kind of vigilante, I'm thinking of ending this permanently. Paige can't live her life hiding at friends' houses every time someone decides I owe them money or services. There has to be a line. Gregory's phone buzzed with an incoming call. Samantha McConnell. Hold on, Ian. Gregory switched over to the other call. Ms. McConnell. Mr. Pratt. Have you considered my employer's offer? I have. The answer is no. I'm disappointed. I was hoping we could resolve this professionally. We can. Tell your employers that Chad Ames' debts died with Chad Ames. Find someone else to collect from. That's not how business works in our industry, Mr. Pratt. Debts are inherited by whoever benefits from the debtor's death. I didn't benefit from Chad Ames' death. I simply stopped him from threatening my family. Nevertheless, the debt remains. Since you've declined our generous offer of employment, we'll be collecting the $15 million through alternative means. What alternative means? Your daughter's life insurance policy, for example. Paige Arnold, age 28, carries a $500,000 policy through her employer. Your own policy is worth $2 million. Of course, we need to wait the appropriate time after your deaths to file claims, but the interest is manageable. Gregory felt the world go red around the edges. You're threatening to kill us for insurance money? I'm explaining basic economics. $15 million is a significant sum. We'll collect it one way or another. Then you've made a serious miscalculation. Have I? You've just threatened the wrong person's daughter for the 2nd time in a month. The first people who did that are all dead. Mr. Pratt, you killed 4 men in a remote cabin with help from a military colleague. Impressive, but not particularly scalable. We have resources you can't imagine. So did Chad Ames. Gregory hung up and switched back to Ian. Change of plans. We're not negotiating with these people. What happened? They just threatened to kill Paige for insurance money. Ian swore creatively. All right, what's the new plan? We hunt them down and eliminate them. All of them. Greg, that's 6 professional killers spread across multiple countries. Even with help, we're talking about a campaign that could take years. Then we better get started. Gregory ended the call and immediately began making preparations. From his hidden cache of military equipment, he retrieved items he'd hoped never to use again: false identification documents, untraceable credit cards, and contact information for black market weapons dealers. His phone rang. Paige, Dad, there's a woman here at Rebecca's house. She says she needs to talk to you. Gregory's blood turned to ice. Don't let her in. Don't. She's already inside. She came in with Rebecca. Put her on the phone. Hello, Mr. Pratt. Samantha's voice was calm, professional. I thought you might reconsider our offer if the stakes were made more immediate. If you hurt her, I have no intention of hurting anyone. Your daughter is a lovely young woman. She's been telling me about her work at the hospital, how much she enjoys helping people. I can appreciate that sentiment. I help people too, in my own way. What do you want? The same thing I wanted yesterday. Your services in exchange for cancellation of Mr. Ames' debt. The only difference is that now you have additional motivation to accept. Gregory was already moving, grabbing weapons and equipment while keeping the phone pressed to his ear. I'll be there in an hour. Oh, you won't be coming here, Mr. Pratt. That would complicate things unnecessarily. Instead, you're going to complete the first assignment from the envelope I gave you. Ricky Erickson, the former Blackwater contractor who's scheduled to testify next week. When he's dead, I'll release your daughter. And if I refuse, then Paige becomes the example I use to motivate your friend, Mr. Davidson, who I'm told is quite fond of you both." The line went dead. Gregory stared at his phone for a moment, then called Ian back. "They have Paige." "Jesus. Where?" "I don't know, but they want me to kill Ricky Erickson as proof of cooperation." "Greg, Erickson is under federal protection. He's the key witness in the Blackwater prosecution. If you kill him, I know what he is. I also know what Paige is." Ian was quiet for a long moment. "There might be another way. What if we fake Erickson's death? Make it look like he was eliminated, but actually extract him to safety?" Gregory considered this. "It would have to be perfect. These people are professionals. They'll verify the kill. I have contacts in witness protection. People who owe me favors. We could make Ricky Erickson disappear so completely that even Samantha's employers would believe he was dead. And if it doesn't work, then we go to Plan B. We find where they're holding Paige and extract her by force." "All right, set it up. But Ian, if this goes wrong, if they hurt her because we try to be clever, it won't go wrong. We're going to save both of them." Gregory hung up and continued his preparations. In 6 hours, he would either save an innocent witness and rescue his daughter, or he would begin a killing spree that wouldn't end until every member of Samantha McConnell's organization was dead. Either way, Gregory Pratt was done being a retired soldier. The quiet life of a neighborhood butcher was officially over. Time to remind the world why Delta Force operators were the most feared soldiers on the planet. His kill count stood at 298. By tomorrow, that number would be significantly higher. Epilogue. 6 months later, Gregory Pratt closed his butcher shop for the final time, hanging a sold sign in the window. The new owner, a young Italian immigrant named Tony, had promised to maintain the shop's reputation for quality and service. Paige stood beside him, watching her father lock the door on 5 years of civilian life. "Any regrets?" she asked. "Only that it took me so long to figure out I wasn't built for retirement." The operation to save Ricky Erickson had worked perfectly. Ian's contacts in witness protection had relocated the man to a new identity in Australia, while staged crime scene photos convinced Samantha's organization that their demands had been met. What they hadn't anticipated was Gregory's next move. Instead of waiting for their next assignment, Gregory and Ian had gone hunting. Using intelligence gathered during the Erickson operation, they'd tracked down all 6 members of Samantha's consortium over the course of 4 months. Some had died quietly in apparent accidents. Others had simply disappeared, their bodies never found. Samantha McConnell herself had died in a car bombing in Prague, a message to anyone else who might consider threatening Gregory's family. The final body count, 12 additional kills, bringing Gregory's total to 310. "So what's next?" Paige asked as they walked toward Gregory's truck. "Ian and I are starting a consulting business. Security services for people who find themselves in complicated situations." "You mean people with criminal problems that can't be solved through legal channels?" "I mean people who need help that only someone with our particular skill set can provide." Paige studied her father's face. Over the past 6 months, she'd watched him transform back into the soldier he'd always been beneath the surface. The change wasn't entirely negative. He seemed more at peace, more authentic than he had in years. "And you're okay with that life?" "I'm okay with being useful again. 4 or 5 years, I tried to be someone I wasn't. Now I'm going back to being someone I am." They reached the truck, where Ian Davidson waited with a duffel bag and a satellite phone. "Ready?" Ian asked. "Ready." Gregory turned to his daughter. "Paige, I want you to know." "Dad, stop. I understand. You're not a butcher who used to be a soldier. You're a soldier who tried being a butcher. There's nothing wrong with accepting who you are." Gregory hugged his daughter, knowing it might be months before he saw her again. The work he and Ian would be doing didn't allow for regular family visits. "I love you, sweetheart. I love you too. Try not to kill anyone who doesn't deserve it. I'll do my best." As Gregory and Ian drove away, heading toward their first official contract, Gregory felt something he hadn't experienced in 5 years, a sense of purpose. The world was full of predators who threatened innocent people, and most of those predators couldn't be stopped through legal means. But they could be stopped. Gregory Pratt, former Delta Force operative, former butcher, and current problem solver, was back in business. Some problems required a scalpel, others required a cleaver, and Gregory Pratt was an expert with both.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.